undergraduate and graduate school. She is a self-made woman. She started her business career as a secretary and went on to become the first and to date the only woman to lead a Fortune 20 company. Carly is running. Let me tell you, her website is carlyforcalifornia.com, and she is here to ask you all for your help to fire Barbara Boxer in November. Ladies and gentlemen, Carly Fiorina.
Well, good afternoon, fellow taxpayers. How's it feel? Lousy. Yeah, lousy, exactly. You know, and the ultimate irony, you know what yesterday was? Yesterday was Tax Freedom Day. Yesterday was the first day in this year when we weren't working to pay Uncle Sam. And here we go today, we're just starting to pay all over again. You know, it seems to me that a lot of people in Washington, D.C. have forgotten a basic. You know, it's our money, not theirs. And we know that President Obama and Barbara Boxer want to raise our taxes. And we also know that every time the subject of raising taxes comes up, the Democrats always say, oh, no, we're only going to tax the rich.
Right.
And then it turns out by rich they mean anyone with a job, anyone who's going to create a job. You know, Barbara Boxer has been in Washington, D.C. for 28 years.
No.
10 years as a congresswoman and 18 long years as the junior senator from California. And let's review what's happened in the 28 years since she has been in Washington, D.C. Well, our national debt has climbed from $1 trillion to $12.5 trillion. It will reach $20 trillion within the decade, and for the first time in American history, foreigners own more of our debt than Americans do, which means our debt is not just an economic problem, it is a national security problem. Our deficit will triple to over $4 trillion in the next several years. Our government now manages the automotive sector, the healthcare sector. If Barbara Boxer has her way and a cap and trade bill is passed this year, our government will manage the energy sector. And right now, sitting on the floor of the U.S. Senate is a financial reform bill that will give the government the power to break up any financial institution that it deems needs to be broken up. And while the unemployment rate here in California is at 12.5%, we have 8 counties in this state with unemployment rates of over 20%. While Californians suffer all over this great state because they can't find a job because they've been without a job for too long, Barbara Boxer enthusiastically signed on to the economic stimulus package and promised that we would see only 8% unemployment or less. The truth is, people like Barbara Boxer don't have a clue where jobs come from. They don't know who create jobs. The federal government does not create the American dream, although the federal government can surely destroy the American dream. The people who create the American dream are not in Washington. They are here at this rally today. The people who create the American dream, the people who have always made California the golden state, the land of opportunity, within the land of opportunity are hardworking men and women, small business owners, family businesses, innovators, entrepreneurs, people who start out with a little company, maybe out of their garage, maybe out of their kitchen, but they have a big dream and they dream to build a better life for themselves and their families. That is where the American dream comes from. And while we are making it harder and harder and harder for those people to have their shot at the American dream, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Barbara Boxer are going to keep raising our taxes. They're going to keep raising our taxes because of the health care bill. They're going to keep raising our taxes because of the expiration of the Bush tax cuts. And now, responsible people in the Obama administration are having serious conversations about a value-added tax and an excise tax. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, that Barbara Boxer has never met a tax increase that she didn't like. She has never met a government program that she would not support. Barbara Boxer believes that the federal government is the answer to every problem, and we know that the federal government is most usually part of the problem. You know, I think Washington could use a little more common sense, frankly. And common sense tells me, just as it tells you, what do you do when somebody has a spending problem? You cut them off. That's right, man. You cut them off. If your teenager has a spending problem, you cut them off. If you have a part of a business that has a spending problem, you cut them off. And that is why I signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge the day I announced my candidacy for the U.S. Senate. We need to cut Washington off. We need to demand that our representatives in Washington know that they are accountable for how they spend our money. And in the real world, in the world that you and I live in every day, we know some things that we need to have a little more of in Washington, D.C. We know things like actions speak louder than words. We know things like accountability matters. We know things like every single dollar counts. And we know things like when you're spending somebody else's money, especially when you're spending somebody else's money, you better spend it wisely and well and account for absolutely every dollar. Ronald Reagan talked about the Washington buddy system, and he said that the Washington buddy system exists. It exists not to benefit the American people, not to benefit the American taxpayer. The Washington buddy system exists to benefit the insiders, the special interests, and deal after deal after deal gets cut. And the Washington buddy system, he said, and he was right, exists to feed a special kind of greed. It is the greed of government. The greed of government to take over our choices, to take over our lives, to take more and more of our hard-earned money. I don't know how you came here today. I don't know what your particular path and your particular journey have been to land you here in Pleasanton on April 15th, 2010. But wherever you came from, whatever your journey has been, whether you started out as a Republican, someone who called yourselves conservative or libertarian, whether you were an independent or declined a state, maybe even some of you were Democrats, I'll tell you what, we are all members of one party now. We are members of the Had Enough Party. We have had enough. And that is why we are here today to say we are going to take our government back and we are going to make it work for us. You know, I have never run for public office before. I have lived the American dream. I moved to this state when I was 7 years old. I worked my way through college, got a degree in medieval history, which made me unemployable. Laughter is the right response to that degree. I went off, like many people do when they're unemployable, to law school. Sorry for the lawyers in the room. UCLA law school. I quit after one semester. I hated it. And went back to work doing the same thing that I did to earn my way through college. I typed, I filed, I answered the phones. I have lived the American dream. I know my story is only possible. My story is only possible in this country. My story is the American story. And I step forward to run for public office now because our founding fathers intended ours to be a citizen government. It is what by, for, and of the people means. Enough with professional politicians, enough with perennial office seekers. We need some people from the real world who know where jobs come from, who knows who builds the American dream, to go to Washington and fix this mess.